This podcast is not intended to provide any investment advice. The opinions expressed here by either the hosts or guests do not necessarily reflect the views of PSA, Collectors Holdings, or any of their affiliates. Any discussion of collectible values in the past or present is not a guarantee of future performance.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the PSA Pod, and not just any episode of the PSA Pod. This is an installment of the PSA Pod, an addition to the PSA Pod that has been gone for a few months, but we are back. We teased to it last week in the first episode back in 2025. It is The Index with my guy, Chris McGill from Card Ladder. Chris, I am so pumped to be doing one of these again.
Ryan, as my buddy Big Rang says, it's good to be back.
I love it, man. These are so overdue. These are some of my favorite episodes to record because this is where we put it on the cards. We're focusing on the cards. And for those of you that don't remember, this is kind of where we've explored the hobby from the vantage point of price data, market trends provided by Card Ladder, of course, but there is a twist. So every month when we're choosing a subject to focus on here at the Index, we're zeroing in on a trending athlete or a card in particular whose data supports, an interesting story that we think is relevant to you, the collector. So, we're doing this first episode of the Index of 2025. The Super Bowl is coming up Sunday. Death, taxes, and here we are getting ready to watch Patrick Mahomes on the big stage again. So, this was kind of a no-brainer, right, Chris?
Of course. Yeah. And I think when you first DM'd me the idea of doing a Patrick Mahomes episode, I was like, man, that's the player to do. How often does the hobby get to be actively collecting one of the all-time greats in the midst of his absolute prime, going for a three-peat? It's a very exciting time to be collecting Patrick Mahomes.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And we're going to dive in on the hobby standpoint, or on the hobby vantage point here of Mahomes' standing. That's going to be the bulk of this episode. We're going to kind of tie that in right off the bat. So, I make the joke about, all year it's like, who's ready to dethrone Mahomes? And, Lamar had a big MVP caliber year. Josh Allen had a big MVP caliber year. Joe Burrow, the team, lagged a little, but he had a big MVP caliber year. And that's just in the AFC. And yet again, second weekend in February, here we are again. No one could get it done. So, we talk about the stats and all those things that go into MVP voting in particular. I know anyone who follows you on Instagram knows you're a big MVP, guy, a big MVP race guy, looking at the numbers, the data, the betting odds, all of it. But Mahomes, where is his current standing? We know where his current standing is among the top end NFL QBs in terms of just, he's the guy. But of any of these other guys, and let's take Aaron Rodgers out of this when we're talking about active quarterbacks, because that's, again, another established GOAT. Do any of these other guys seem to really at this point be as hobby established as Mahomes? And what I mean by that is if he retired tomorrow, his legacy, not just on the field, but in the hobby, is cemented. Whereas you can't say the same thing for other guys. Is anybody else even close?
And we're talking only active, right?
Yes, only active.
No. Yeah. Right? Does anybody come to mind as even a competitor?
Taking championships out of it, right? The only guy who I think outside of Rodgers, who I think maybe even has a minor case, might be Lamar Jackson if he gets his third MVP here at the end of the week.
Yeah,
and even then, there's just such an asterisk to it.
Totally, and a lot of the activity I see around Lamar's market is very reactionary to stuff that's happening week to week and awards driven, and it doesn't seem to be very collector based yet. And price wise, there are several QBs, I think, card for card, who are a little bit ahead of him or even with him.
Great.
Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, some of those guys are right there in that same ballpark as him. But I think there's plenty of room for there to be a handful, a dozen players to emerge from this era, quarterbacks to emerge from this era, who are going to be collectible, even though Mahomes is basically Michael Jordaning them, like how Jordan was blocking everybody in the 90s. I mean, that didn't stop us from having lots of players, basketball players, to collect in the 90s. So don't you think Joe Burrow's, let's say he has a great 10 to 15 year career, Josh Allen. I mean, can't these guys fall into the Dan Marino category or the Barry Sanders category where, yeah, they'd never won the big game, but great players from a nostalgic era. I think they'll still be really collectible.
Totally, especially in the highlight era that we live in now, where I think a lot of these guys' careers are going to live on long beyond them, because there's going to be content consumed of their careers and relived for years to come. But yeah, it's Mahomes is the only guy though still right now where I feel like I use this term cemented, like his hobby status is cemented if he stopped playing tomorrow. And I don't think we're saying that about any of these other guys quite solid as solidly.
I know. And I think I saw on Twitter the other day that every season since he became the starting quarterback in 2018, he's at least made the AFC Championship. They win their division every year for the most part. Earlier he was putting up 4,000, 5,000 yard seasons, but now that's sort of still, he's not doing that right now because of the way their offense is assembled, but they're winning 15 games in a season. So it's everything. It's regular season dominance. Yeah. It's playoff pushes, deep runs, it's memories being made every year. And then he's the clear cut, most valuable player of that team. You could make things a little bit better hobby wise. Like if he was throwing for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns every year, that would just be, I think then is the perfect scenario, but I don't know. I think it's dang near the perfect football player for the hobby.
It's funny, like when we were watching the AFC Championship game and, the Chiefs get that first down to seal it at the end and they show the shot of Josh Allen on the sideline sitting on the bench. Oh. And I mean, he just had the most disappointed, just empty look on his face. And the only thing I could think in that moment, it was funny you mentioned how Mahomes is Michael Jordaning everyone. I was like, this is what it must have been looking at Charles Barkley on the bench in the 93 NBA finals, where he has the MVP season and did everything he could to will this team there. And it's just still not enough. So that said, I know with football fans, on the fan side, maybe there's a little bit of Chiefs quote unquote fatigue at this point as they're going to, the Super Bowl yet again, trying to win their third in a row. But, from a hobby standpoint, do you think people have fatigued on him at all as being the guy? Has it affected his collectability in the negative at all? Has it had no effect? Is he still or is it a total opposite of what maybe some of the fan sentiment is, where his status in the hobby just keeps growing?
Love this question. I have two perspectives on this. The first one is that there is absolutely a fatigue that has found its way into the hobby as well. Saw a clip of Chris Broussard explaining that he thinks the reason why there's some fatigue surrounding Mahomes is that now they're having so much dominance in a defensive smash mouth football style.
It's not fun to watch.
It's not the 5,000 yard per season aerial assault. It's a lot of short passes. It's a lot of rushing, and it's a lot of defense. And so that his theory was that this is why one of the reasons why people are growing tired of the Chiefs. It's not Jaden Daniels scoring 45 points. It's just not as exciting. So I do think there is fatigue. That might be one of the reasons why, and it does trickle into the hobby. But here's the second point that I wanted to make. I was talking to a prominent Mahomes collector today who has parted with several of his Mahomes cards, some of his nicer ones, over the last month. And dude, there is a buying flurry with Mahomes right now. I'm talking to people who are just, what do you think about, I'm trying to get this Mahomes card, and if he gets another one, I mean, there's so much activity towards Mahomes market right now. Well, this collector was saying he sold several of his best Mahomes. He sold them to Tom Brady collectors. The hedge. What do you think about that? What do you think about the hedge of people we're really confident that when they're buying Brady cards, they're buying the GOAT, who will remain the GOAT, but now all of a sudden there is a contender on the horizon.
I think it says something about like the place in, the atmosphere where Mahomes has reached, right? I think he could retire. Like I keep saying this, he could retire tomorrow. And I think there's still going to be people who are going to say like what he did in this short window as a starter is equally as impressive, if not more impressive than what Brady did over a longer span. You know what I mean? I think he's in that category now. It's official. And we've seen it apply to the hobby. So it's funny to hear, like, it's interesting to hear you say that, like, while on the fan side, there is some of that fatigue, but on the hobby side, Mahomes is as hot as ever. And the other question I have for you is, we here at PSA, we always talk about things like this, like must grade players, right? The perfect example in the recent years in sports is Shohei Ohtani. You're ripping a box of cards, it doesn't even matter the year. It could be 2024, 2025, or you're going back to his rookie year. Pretty much any card of Shohei Ohtani you pull now has a certain level of value compared to everything else in that box. And it's like, if you're someone who grades cards for your collection or, along in your collecting journey, he's like a must grade player. Any card you pull of Ohtani goes into the grade pile. On the football side, do you think Mahomes has reached that hobby status yet?
Maybe not for every product, but I can speak to this personally. So quick story. My brother was visiting Christina and I in Dallas in June of last year to go to some of the finals games between the Mavericks and the Celtics.
Shout out Stiff Arm
Wax. And he got on the Jumbotron and he won a prize for being like the craziest fan during one of the intermissions. You should go look at that video on his page if you haven't. But anyway, while he was here, we went to a card shop in Dallas. Wanted to buy a box. The box we settled on at the shop was a 2020 Mosaic football box, first year of Mosaic football. Bought that box. Also an amazing rookie class, right? Jefferson.
Oh, yeah.
And, all the QBs who are like, Hurts, etc. And so we opened that box and lots of gradable cards came out. A Jefferson color match out of like 49, I think it was, or something. A Travis Kelce, like that I recently graded, that was like the white parallel out of 25, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
A Mahomes base card came out and I immediately threw it into a penny sleeve, threw it into a card saver and put it in the to grade pile. A Mahomes base card, because it is Mahomes. And if that card comes back as a PSA 10, the value proposition is there. That card should fetch $40 or $50 at least, just because it's Mahomes and it's a PSA 10. So I maybe not for every product, but for Mosaic, for Prism, for some of these type of products, like, yeah, if a Mahomes base card comes out and it looks like it could get a 10, I think I'm gonna submit it.
That's awesome. That's so the answer is kind of yes.
Yeah. He as much as almost anybody could possibly be. I mean, like Michael Jordan is at this status. Ohtani is at this status. LeBron, Brady, I think, is at this status. Brady, like you can just have like a random, and actually for LeBron, even for the lower tier products, like a random year of threads. Like if a LeBron base card comes out and gets a PSA 10, that's probably going to get $30 or $40 or something like that. So
it's not quite small enough to be a Mount Rushmore, but it's a very small class.
It is.
Yeah. So we've got the perspective on his standing in the hobby, but now let's back it up with some data. So that's what we love doing here on the index. So I want to start on the card ladder side. It's been an interesting year for Mahomes. Like you said, they had an incredible regular season. They go 15-2. They march their way all the way back to the Super Bowl again. What did Mahomes' activity during this past year? What you're seeing within card ladder? What does his activity look like over the course of the last year while he's been on this? I guess you could call it like a non-conventional for him run to the Super Bowl. Oh yeah,
last 12 months, his card ladder index, which tracks 292 different cards, one of the bigger indexes, up 42%. That's a lot. That's a really substantial index growth. I'm sure that's one of the best over the last 12-month period. Yeah, his cards are just doing exceptionally well.
Man, that's it's funny because his I guess you could say his market has just been so talked about the last few years because he was one of the darlings of the peak of the hobby during that 2020, 2021 era, period where, cards were just having this huge boom, and it was coinciding with the beginning of his dominant run. So, and then his market kind of corrected quite a bit. It's good to see things like that where it's, his performance is being able to boost it. Because a lot of people are involved with Mahomes cards, period, at all levels. Looking at some notable sales of the past year, which are some that you think are very healthy indicators of his market?
There's a lot of them, and I could rattle like some of the one, like some of his like 6th and 7th year Prism Gold Vinyl PSA 10s are selling for 15 to 20 grand. That card's numbered to 5. I mean, that's
unbelievable.
That's but I think what I'll just focus on here is his 2017 Prism PSA 10. Technically
like
the staple. I mean, it is the base card from the set, even though it's shiny like a silver. It is the base version. It's just under a pop 1000. That card is selling for around $5,800 bucks right now. It was $4,000 a year ago. So that card, it mirrors his overall index growth. It's up even a little bit more. That card's up 44% over the last year. So I think that, that is the staple, like you said. And yeah, I mean, it's almost up 50%.
Wow. It's, that's interesting to see. I didn't look at this data before, I like to kind of keep it a little bit of a surprise. I did not expect to hear that kind of rise for his Prism PSA 10.
I didn't expect to see it either. I mean, that card trades all the time. Like, I'm looking at how many sales Card Lab has tracked of it over the last year. 113 sales. I mean, like, this card sells every week.
It's always available.
Yeah.
It's one of those cards where me and you have talked about this, about the 86 Fleer Jordan, right? From your experience where, say you're holding on to a PSA 10 Mahomes right now, the week before the Super Bowl, and you've got another card that you're looking at hunting, and maybe you're looking at some cards in your collection to consolidate to go chase a bigger card. Like the Mahomes Prism PSA 10 feels like one that you can comfortably sell while it's hot right now, because you have that mindset of I can go get another one at any time, because it's not like there's a pop of 10,000 of them, but there's almost 1,000 of them, which means they're going to be constantly transacting. There's almost always going to be at some point one available on the market.
Yep. That's what you would think. And I think that applies in almost every scenario, but if they three-peat and this card is suddenly like $8,000 for a while, and
maybe
you might have to be patient if you wanted to add this one back right now.
Yeah, there might. That's true. I feel like there's going to be some more diamond hands out there after the fact if they win another one.
Yeah.
On the PSA side, looking at our grading data, we took a look at the most graded players since the beginning of 2024. So basically over the last 13 months. No shock that CJ Stroud is number one, largely because as products came out early last year and throughout the offseason, coming off that memorable rookie season he had, he was as hot as he'll probably ever be in the hobby. We graded 231,000 cards of CJ Stroud over the last 13 months. Anthony Richardson is second. A lot of that quarterback prospecting market in the offseason. So you had a lot of those coming here. Mahomes is third. So even though he's still, he has a lot of graded inventory, the inventory out there continues to pile up. We graded 72,000 Patrick Mahomes cards since the start of 2024. So Chris, I think that actually lends to what you were saying. A lot of people are ripping product and pulling, maybe it's low end parallels even, or base cards of Mahomes. And it's for people who rip cards to then grade them. It's an auto grade.
Exactly. I think that's exactly what that says. Those 72,000 cards are people like me who are like just opening boxes, and every Mahomes card is going into the grading pile. What's interesting about your list too, Stroud, AR-15, those are the two ahead of him. Right behind him, you have Purdy and Bryce Young. Everybody on that list except for Mahomes is a prospect.
Yeah.
Bona fide prospect. Mahomes is obviously and one of the most established quarterbacks of all time. And like we were talking a little bit before about who are some of the other active quarterbacks on the collectability, within a range of Mahomes is and collectible wise. And these other four are just, these are guys who are, the whole future's ahead of them still. They are nowhere near the level of some of these other QBs. So it's amazing. It's amazing to see Mahomes right in the midst of guys who, we're mostly grading rookie cards of these guys right now.
Exactly. Well, now we get to my favorite part of these episodes. Every time we do them, this is where we kind of get to play the fantasy role a little bit and go shopping with imaginary money. So we like to talk about, we start from low end, then we go mid end and high end, talking about if we were going to be diving into Patrick Mahomes from a collecting standpoint and starting a PC, looking at some recent sales, things like that, what would be cards that we would be eyeing at the low, mid and high end? So Chris, I want to start on the low end. So for here, we say anything from like a low end base card up to about $500. What stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, the approach I took to this exercise was, imagine I'm walking the floor at the Dallas Card Show and I'm looking at display cases, and I've looked at 50 of them, and now I'm coming up on number 51. What Mahomes card in that display case is going to catch my eye and might get me to reach for my wallet and buy a card? And so then I went to Card Ladder and I just set the filter to beneath $500 and put in a couple parameters that I like. And then this is one of the ones that I found. This sale is actually 14 months old. So it's the card sold for $300 then. It's probably worth around $500 now. The card is the 2023 Gold Standard Mahomes Black 1 of 1 in a grade of PSA 9. It's the only 1 of 1 to the base set, and it is Mahomes' true base set card. And it's just a beautiful card. I mean, the design is beautiful. Gold Standard is a product that has a lineage going back to 2017. So Mahomes is going to have, a handful of Gold Standard 1 of 1s from the base set. And this would be what I guess is 7th year one. But it's just beautiful card. If I saw this with a $500 sticker and a Dallas Card Show display case, I promise you, I would be like, you couldn't get the money out of my hand fast enough.
I love that you picked this card because I feel like it's a good reminder, or just kind of indicator. People may get this misconception that a Patrick Mahomes 1 of 1 card or rookie cards or all that, they may be like unattainable at this point, but they're out there. The really nice cards to add to your collection, no matter the budget you're working on, are out there. Just think about how this card would, like, any Instagram page, from the most high-end collector to a dealer who specializes in PSA 10 base rookie cards. Any Instagram page would be enhanced by adding this card to it. I mean, this is a card that can fit into any collection, any showcase. Like, if I were a dealer, I'd want to have a showcase full of cards like this. I had a pick on the lower end, and it's funny because we talked about 2017 Prism, his rookie product, a little while ago. And it's funny how certain products become iconic because of the players that are in them. So, other players' cards in 2017, people relate that to being the set that Mahomes' most notable rookie card is in, right? Whether that's a real thing or not, I think it's kind of a fun angle. I'm a big fan of 2020 Prism football. It's like you mentioned earlier, huge rookie class with a lot of quarterbacks who I think when all is said and done, it's going to be looked at as a pretty historic rookie quarterback class with Herbert, Burrow, Hurts, Tua, Love, etc. You could get a nice looking silver Prism Mahomes out of that product, PSA 10 for under $200.
That's cool.
Kind of a nice card to just pair. Maybe if you have any of those other rookies in the set. Big fan of the Prism design in 2020 as well.
Yeah, that's fun. Like when you've got, everybody has like a favorite year of Prism, right? Like, yeah, exactly. If Mahomes has a sweet PSA 10, silver or maybe one of the other colors, and it's in your favorite year of Prism, that's a really cool approach.
Now let's go. We're going to call this the mid tier. So this is when we're getting up close to around $1,000 up to, let's just call it like $3,000. So a really solid, really nice Mahomes card. Maybe you're consolidating some other cards to get into it. Maybe you got some extra budget to play with. What are you looking at in this range?
Yeah, so I cheated a little bit. I picked a sale that's about 11 and a half months old. It sold for $2,700 then. It's probably worth closer to $4,000 today. So I'm a little bit outside the range.
You're still close enough to the range.
Close enough. And the card is 2021 Mosaic Nebula Choice 1 of 1 PSA 9. And this is a cool card. I love that Mahomes is the first card in the base set. This is the second year of Mosaic football. And Prism Nebula football cards are just having a moment. And that just makes me think about other Nebulas. I mean, the Nebula was introduced in Prism football for the first time for the 2024 product, but it's been in other products for longer. And Mosaic is one of the examples where, this is Mahomes' second Mosaic Nebula. So it's not the first. That would probably go for more. But second ain't bad. Great looking card. Nebulas are, gaining a following among football collectors. Mosaic has a longer lineage and tie to the Nebula than Prism does. I don't know. It seemed
that's awesome.
Seemed pretty good for the range.
Yeah, and that's a man. Talk about someone who timed a really nice buy 11 months ago.
Right. Exactly.
In the mid range. This is one of those cards that I keep looking at over the last 3 years, and I still have yet to pull the trigger on one. But kind of going back a little bit to the mentality that we were talking about earlier, there's not a huge rush to do it. The 2017 Optic, so this is his rookie card, the red-yellow parallel, unnumbered parallel, but a two-color color match with the Chiefs. PSA population, in a PSA 10 population is a little over 1,100, so a little bit of a higher pop. It is his highest pop among his parallels below the base card, but still not terribly oversaturated. You can get PSA 10s of this for around $2,500. And the shine on this product was really nice. I love the photos in 2017 Optic with the rookies. I loved the photos they used for Optic. I believe the range was about 2016 through 2018. We have a coworker here who calls them our buddy Jack Archer. He calls them it's like a Friday Night Lights looking rookie portrait. I love this card. I think it's a cool, unique parallel. It's very rare that a red yellow parallel is a full true color match.
Yeah,
I like the little details of it.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of Mahomes rookie cards, the Optic design is one of the very first that comes to mind. It's iconic. Double color match is sweet. I mean, this is one of the cards that just is Mahomes.
Yeah, exactly. Now we go to the part where we really dream. Let's go to the high end. So, we're talking here, probably 5K plus. It's a grail for anyone. What would you want to go out and find?
Well, you said 4K plus and sort of said, let's keep it like somewhat attainable, but if I'm going to dream big.
I'm fine with that.
And I have a little bit of a background story about this card too, but the card is the 2017 Vertex Capstones Autograph Relics. In other words, Vertex's patch autograph, Onyx 1 of 1. It's the only 1 of 1 of Mahomes in the base set, and it is a card from the base set, which makes it a true rookie, which is cool. It's graded PSA Authentic, which is completely fine. It's a beautiful 1 of 1, and PSA authenticated it, and that's a huge factor for 1 of 1s. I definitely want them in a PSA slab. So the card itself looks nice. The autograph looks pretty nice. You've got, what do you think about the patch? I know we can both look at an image of it right now. The 4 patch windows. What do you think about that?
I love that one is a laundry tag as well. I like that you got variety with colors in the windows. I like it. And I love the bold on card auto. I'm a big fan of Mahomes rookie year autos because that was really the only year his auto looked like that on cards. I mean, now he barely signs any cards, but by 2020, his rookie card his autographs on card were basically P-M-.
He had more time on his hands back then for sure.
Exactly.
I want to touch on the price of this card. So this card sold at the absolute peak of the Mahomes and the football market, which was early, Q1 2022. It sold for $30,000. And that's an interesting price because it is a Mahomes base set patch auto 1 of 1, a 1 of 1 of 1, the only 1 of 1. But Vertex never had another standalone year after 2017. It didn't appear at all in 2018. Then it got retired into Chronicles for 2019 and then just went away. So Vertex is a brand, very little brand equity.
I was going to say, you don't see a lot of these, period.
No, you don't. And the lower, the higher numbered versions of this card sell well too. They start off in the 4 figures and go up from there. But this card, I am a Mahomes collector. You can go to my Instagram page and see the 2 Mahomes cards that I have. And this is a card that I would love to add of Mahomes, and I know who owns it. And, we have a card letter value on the card of $27,000 because the market, including Mahomes' market, his index has adjusted since that price. But I promise you, the person who owns it is not hearing offers in that range. He wants significantly more, and I don't blame him at all for it. But I have tried to obtain this card myself. So I may just be creating more competition for myself by putting it out there right now, but I just could. This card is so cool.
It is really cool.
It's never going to have the brand prestige of NT or Immaculate or Flawless or anything, but
doesn't matter to me.
It just looks great.
It's so cool. I love the perfectly centered rookie badge. Everything. It's everything about it.
It's a great looking card. I once owned the McCaffrey equivalent of this, the McCaffrey 1/1, and it was amazing. I should have kept it. I really regret moving it, to be honest.
I went beyond rookie year. There's a couple rookie cards of his. If I had the funds to go after grail hunting like this, I would want a next day auto. Buddy of mine just recently acquired one. It's an incredible card. There's several. I went non-rookie year. So I went 2021. I don't own a single Kaboom, but his 2021 Kaboom is one of my favorite cards in the run. It's the horizontal photo of him throwing where he was parallel to the ground while being tackled in the Super Bowl that they lost to the Buccaneers. The gold parallel. Unbelievable card. They don't transact often. On Card Ladder, the most recent sale I could find was a Beckett 9.5 from May 2022. So again, in that peak era that sold for just under $13,000. I think it's one of the coolest Kaboom cards there is. And I connect this to like personal memory because I remember like just being so in awe of that moment when he made that throw in the Super Bowl, which was dropped at the goal line, which is the crazy part.
Is that the one that hit Tyreek right in the chest?
Yes. Hit him like right in the chest and fell to the ground. So that would be my pick.
Yeah, it's a great choice. So I went over to Card Ladder sales history to try and find it really quick, and I punched in. And I think like one of the testaments to the iconic status of a card is
I know what you're gonna say.
When there are custom quote versions and like replicas, facsimiles, rip-offs, basically. And I had to scroll through about 10 of them before I could get to an actual sale of the card.
Exactly. It's very similar to it's one of the first Kabooms I think of when I think of the series. So
yeah, it's a great choice.
So we're going to close on this. How does Super Bowl 59 coming up this weekend affect Mahomes in the hobby? I guess, in other words, is he now cemented enough that Sunday's result has not much impact on his hobby market? And on the flip side, how much ceiling remains, or is it even possible to quantify that? Like, we don't know if this guy's going to win 5 more Super Bowls. We don't know if he's going to win 0. How do you look at it based on where he stands right now, the first week of February, heading into the Super Bowl?
Lots of different ways to approach this, and I want to very quickly try to give a little bit of voice to several opinions. I recently heard a really interesting podcast episode by Cage Lawyer, who made the argument that Mahomes' likability, which definitely can translate into collectability, will increase if he actually loses, and we can start to root for him. And he sort of, right now, he's verging on being a villain in the sports space, but if he can somehow come back to being the underdog or a player that we can root for, a player who has to overcome something, a player who has to come back and not just a guy who wins all the time, that actually might increase his likability. So there is an angle that suggests that if he loses this Super Bowl but can return to form, that might make him more likable, more collectible. Me, on the other hand, I'm not so narrative driven. I'm really much more numbers driven, analytically driven. And I think that Mahomes is on the precipice of being able to, well, look, here's the very simple metric that I use: total MVPs. I look at a football player, I say, how many regular season and Super Bowl MVPs do you have combined? Tom Brady has 8, and nobody has 7. Then Peyton Manning has 6, and then there's a 3-way tie for third. Mahomes has 5, Aaron Rodgers has 5, Joe Montana has 5, and then nobody has 4, and then you get a bunch of guys at 3. So Mahomes, in my mind, can make a big leap by getting a Super Bowl MVP, a 4th Super Bowl MVP. That put him tied with Peyton Manning at 6. I also, whenever there is a tie, I give the tie breaker to the person who accomplished it most recently. So I think he will be the second greatest quarterback of all time by my simple metric. I think, some people think the gap between him and Brady is just gigantic because it will still be 7 Super Bowls to 4. Other people will think Mahomes has already caught up to him because of how spectacular he's been during these first 7 years. To me, I think the gap appropriately is 2 more MVPs, whether it's regular season or Super Bowl or some combination thereof, to tie Brady, and 3 more to surpass him. So we know how hard it is to win an MVP. We know how hard it is to get to the Super Bowl. So even having the chance to get within 2 of Brady to tie Peyton, to me, that's monumental. These type of chances are not promised. I think it's just huge. I think if he gets this Super Bowl and Super Bowl MVP, important, but if he gets both, I think it's just a huge moment.
Man, got me fired. You got me like really fired up now. It's funny because I look at this list too. I mean, like you said, tied with Rodgers at 5. I think we can realistically assume Rodgers probably isn't winning another one of either. Right, and the next closest guy on this list as of today is Lamar Jackson at 2.
Yep.
Maybe he has 3 MVP awards by the end of this week. So he's the only one even within really like spitting range.
Well, and Lamar had such an opportunity because what if Lamar had swept this year, won regular season MVP, which we don't know who's won as of the time of this recording, and won Super Bowl MVP, then all of a sudden he would be at 4. And now all of a sudden he's like breathing down Mahomes' neck, and the narrative of this entire era, I think, changes dramatically. But instead, it didn't break that way. He still could be at 3. A month from now, he still could be at 3, which is still solidifies him as one of the GOATs. But Mahomes being able to get to 6 is it's really historical stuff.
Yeah, man. Well, I can't wait to see how it all plays out. I hope you guys out there feel, if you're collectors or even if you're just collector curious and interested in Mahomes cards, we hope this was helpful for you. Chris, give me your prediction, because like we said, we're recording this before the game. Is Mahomes winning his 3rd straight? Are
the Chiefs capable of losing in the playoffs anymore? I think the Chiefs are destined to win by 4 on a last minute drive. Either they score on a final drive or they, or it's like the Bills and they stuff them.
I'll be fully transparent. I'm pulling for the Eagles. Not only is my girlfriend an Eagles fan, but I had Saquon Barkley as my 1st-round draft pick on both fantasy teams this year. I now feel connected to him. I even bought my first rookie auto of him in December, like to commemorate the season. So I kind of want to see it through to the finish. If he wins the Super Bowl, it is legitimately the greatest all-time single season by a running back in NFL history, and I don't think it's really debatable. So,
yep, it's crazy how he's been their MVP in the playoffs too. He has been so
nobody remembers him sitting out Week 18 anymore.
No, and what that adds to his storyline too, because he could have went in there and broke Dickerson's record, but he was like, I'm about the team. I'm about winning the Super Bowl. I'm not going to take the risk of getting hurt and hurting my team. And then the playoffs, he's ripping off multiple, 50-plus yard touchdown runs in playoff games. And now he's, is he going to do in the Super Bowl too? I mean, very exciting season for Saquon and quite the turnaround. And with all the foreshadowing with the Hard Knock season and the Giants and the president.
It's just all too perfect.
It's amazing.
This might never be replicated.
It's amazing.
Well, Chris, thank you for taking the time. For Chris McGill from Card Ladder, I'm Ryan Green from here at PSA. We will talk to you next time on the next episode of the PSA Pod. Take care.